Hi, time for another episode of Simply Stated with Deborah here at the beach, Ghost Stories edition. As you can see today, I'm wearing a hat that I put together and made actually with some craft beads and a little upside down butterfly. It's kind of in honor of my mom for the upcoming Halloween holiday. And also the show is kind of a reference. It is a direct reference to the time they played Magenta actually in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which happened like decades ago when I was younger, but it was a really interesting sort of PG-13 version of the show without all the weird sex. So it just had the dancing and the fun stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, this is a fun reference to the past when I used to perform the time warp and actually perform on stage for people in a show. So, anyways, as for today's episode, I'm actually going to reference what happened with the Lions this week. There is a reference to that in my life. Unfortunately, during the years when I was dealing with constant investigations and was having to go back and forth to Pennsylvania a lot. Unfortunately, dealing with the family of the man who, as I explained to you in the Thought Project, just I was kind of bizarrely date raped by a man that tried to make some amends for it, but heavily embedded in the FSB KGB community here in the U.S. And his mom is too, and his sister, and frankly, they had trafficked me more than a little bit to work for Taylor Swift, and we're part of the situation now with Buffalo Bill. And I say this very delicately because, he's still free and active in the U.S., and he had threatened years ago to attack the Detroit Lions. Or it's so weird how far in advance this stuff is set up because we're going back like 15 years. He said he was going to attack them if they performed well against the Dallas Cowboys. And I forget the different plans I had made because I had talked about moving to Michigan at some point. So I have a lot of people, who are in the DC area. I talked about going back to the northern Midwest or Wisconsin, but if I'd been living in Wisconsin, he'd talked about attacking the Packers. But his plan was basically to strategically protect the Dallas Cowboys. And I know there's been other attacks made against players when the Dallas Cowboys have not been able to perform at their peak because of his strident support of them with the FSB. What people don't get about the Dallas Cowboys is that they've turned into very much a Russian-owned team. And the FSB is very heavily in favor of them the same way that they support the Kansas City Chiefs. So what you're kind of looking at is another round of what we saw last year with the shootings and the fighting around the Super Bowl. And maybe we'll be lucky and Taylor Swift will actually subtract herself this year instead of staying around to cause more shootings and fights, because that's apparently all she was around for last year, was to carry intel back and forth so that DHS could watch another round of shootings go down. Like, I'm sort of confused anymore because there was so much advanced intel and all that stuff that it's been hard to deal with the U.S. government just letting the shootings happen. And hard to go through what I've lived through as far as knowing so much in advance and then watching the FBI just really not care about the issues. And of course, they've been downsized and downgraded, and they're just no longer respected at all as a result, because I'm not the only one who's gone through this, but that's the reality of what you're looking at. So, bizarrely, and if you're wondering who specifically this person was, I mean, he knows who he is. He and his wife have been a problem for other people. His sister-in-law is actually a government employee who decided to try to turn them in some herself because she just didn't want to. She has a government job benefits. She didn't want to go down for all this stuff. And what I'm trying to get to is that, this week, because I have other things to do, his mother had made some really bizarre signs through her community here to me. And he had said he would place a pair of glasses in a store that I go to that would be very much like him. And he said, how will those be? He said, probably too much metal and have extra grommets in them. It would give me a headache. I found them. I actually bought them temporarily and then returned them. I put them on at home for a minute and they gave me an immediate headache. Just like him, And he was actually a model in a Ludacris video who got away with putting in a bunch of Nazi signs. And then when I was down in DC, I reported he's just popped over a bunch of rapes at Juniata College. Like, I'm friends with a bunch of those women. You can kind of see how this all loops around. So in some ways, I'm making this show as much for the other women I've known who've been victims of what he put them through as much for himself. But then I know for a fact that he's the person who set up the injury to Aiden Hutchinson this week. And he's the football defensive end for the Detroit Lions. He had surgery on Monday, 10/15/24. His tibia and fibula. It's not normal to break that bone. It was a clean break. But you can tell from the footage it was pretty obviously a signet attack and with Russian systems. And that's what people really don't want to talk about. Or I'll talk about it because I know something about it. But You know, he was considered a best defensive player. I'm just going to go through the other players on Detroit Lions because they got a bunch of really good people in and they're doing better. Sam Laporta is a tight end. Jared Goff, you know, Jaden Hudson was listed as one. Amon Ra, St. Brown has been going back and forth threats with one of the other players, the Dallas Cowboys. And then you have Penei Sewell, who's a top offensive tackle. I'm just kind of frustrated because I spent so much time reporting on this person who raped me, and he's been raped, and now he's gone ahead with this attack on a football player. And I'm not saying it's because of me. It's obviously about his devotion to Dallas Cowboys. It has a lot to do with Endeavor WME. He was one of their people. He's represented by them. So this is obviously a defensive attack by a corporate entity that's run by Russia and FSB people and the Chinese CCP. You know, there's been a lot of jokes made about how the NBA is completely run by China now. And it looks like the FSB is really making an attempt to try to take over the NFL as well. And I really hate to see it happen because it's obvious they're not going to go along with it. But to see these fights play out, you know, to be wondering about the next season, to be thinking to myself that I wouldn't recommend anybody to go to a football game in person anymore for the NFL right now. Or to be very careful if you do, you know. Be thinking defensively and be prepared for terrorist attacks if you do go. That's a really hard thing for me to put together a show, but that's the modern American ghost story that we're dealing with. That we have so many people from the Russian FSB active here in the US that, you know, against the other people would say, oh, Deborah was just injury. It's looked like one of the worst injuries anyone's ever seen in a total freak injury. So it's obviously one that was set up with a Cigna system. And you can't even joke about this stuff because now in DC area where people are actually really up on these issues, they know that. They know that all crimes are pretty much planned out with Cigna systems. There was no reason for his leg to have broken like that. And I think there needs to be some consideration here for the fact that the guy that I nicknamed the Butthole Porter rapist, just to be really obnoxious because I hate the guy, you know, still free, and a friend of that guy. I call him the ludicrous model. I don't know what to say because he was fired, you know, he was taken out of the video and fired. He still got paid for the work on the video. I never received restitution for being raped by him, neither did the women from Giuliana. I didn't even go to Giuliana. I just know all these women now because of it. So, you know, you think this stuff goes away. It doesn't, because we've never gotten justice. And now he's going to head and attack a football player. And I need to caution the medical community because an awful lot of you were overexcited about the surgery. There were all these different medical groups here in Michigan going on about the surgery and the Centers for Orthopedic Surgery, and they're all excited and promoting themselves. It's like, watch it. You better watch it. Because that injury was known about a long time ago in advance. And just say, hey, it happened and there was a successful surgery and, oh, look at us. Like, that's a really bad position to be in because it makes it look like some of you were okay with it as a way of promoting your business. And that's not okay. That's not actually acceptable. I hope the guy, poor guy, you know, I hope he gets recovered. I hope that he doesn't go back and try to play it all for the rest of the season. And I hope he stays out of, you know, harm's way basically and just, you know, gets that leg healed up and ready for another season. I don't think he should bother trying to go back this year, especially not what's going on. Another kind of joke I made about the hat, we're going to talk about the hat now for a minute again, is it originally came with one of these on it, so I thought, oh, yeah, it's definitely happy birthday to me. I bought a hat for myself and I did it up, made it into a little costume, so, you know, that's me, that's my style. And, you know, I think for most people, like for me, when stuff like that happens, it just really throws me off, especially when I'm living all the way over here and people come in the community to try to like make signs at me that something's happened. You know, the ludicrous model, his mom also made signs that she really wasn't gonna, she was gonna put some holes on the white and brown sugar supplies this year, which I warned you about last year in the shows. Nobody ever believes me until it happens, but I went to the stores and the cheaper dollar stores do not have white and brown sugar supplies like they normally would this year. So if you are really dependent on those for the holidays, please go stock up. I know most of you are very nimble, probably watch cooking shows, you can think of alternatives, or you might just buy some prepackaged stuff. I have no idea. Most people don't lose it over this stuff, but some people really do because what they make for the holidays is really important for them traditionally. So I'm just sort of warning you now, like, don't procrastinate on stocking up on your sugar supplies for the holidays if you have certain dishes that you need to make with them that are really important to you for whatever reason. So, um, for me, I think, um, like, this is how far around this thing circuits. I went back to the store this week where I got the sunglasses that he had put there that gave me the headache, and his mom had placed this pair there. Um, so I went and exchanged them and got these instead. So there's some kind of whatever it is with them culturally, like she wasn't meaning for me to be sort of hurt in that situation, I guess. Which is why she wanted the sunglasses there. It's a sad story in a lot of ways. It's also a really strange one, and because the stuff has gone in my life and does occur is why I do sort of, I went through a phase where I questioned my own sanity and then went through it long enough that I was like, nope, I'm not crazy. There's just a whole bunch of other people that clearly are. That's just what we're living in. But, I think the Detroit Lions have a great future ahead of them this year. There was a lot with the football drama last year because of Buffalo Bill and his machinations and this craziness with Endeavor. And, P. Diddy's gone down. The entirety of American U.S. society and life shouldn't really be rocked by these things, and I'm really glad that it isn't because how resilient we are as a country. But we've also taken a lot of time as a country to build our own alternative forms of entertainment and entertainment options. And I want to also add, I fully meant what I said last year, which is I would much rather be working in an emergency room as a doctor the day of the Super Bowl than watching it. I don't think any of these people are worth my time. And it's not necessarily the football players, but the game just looked totally stupid, and Taylor Swift looked like an idiot, and knowing she was there representing the Russian FSB is just completely ridiculous and weird. And, I even started to wonder by now if she was actually dead after her trip to England, because I know they don't really like her. So, it's weird. A lot of the stuff is just a little too weird. And I'm kind of just over a lot of it. So anyways, I just want to thank a lot of you for following this show. And, I need to remind you of something else that came up this week, which is that a report was released that the country of Georgia has been the number one supplier of secondhand cars to Russia. Like, you wonder what happened to my car down in Charlottesville that got hit, and then all the other cars down there that got hit and weren't useful, and then nobody knows where they went. The reason there's been all these weird setups, talking about the Volkswagen issues and those schemes, the cars were all actually being knocked out and then sent to Georgia to then be sold into Russia cheaply. So they are literally attacking cars, people's cars in other countries, developed countries, knocking them out, ruining the systems, and then funneling them out of the U.S. to Georgia now, the country of Georgia, not the state, and then into Russia. So it's important to know that that's what's going on. My Volkswagen probably, I hope it was reworked and sold to somebody in Charlottesville, but it may have actually been sent to Russia with a whole bunch of other cars down in Charlottesville. Because there was really entire lots of cars that were knocked out and stopped working all at the same time down there. And it was mostly a hit on the National Ground Control Center. After Russia started trying to invade the Ukraine. So, this has been another edition of Simply Stated, and I hope you enjoyed it, and have a good one. Simply Stated Ghost Stories.